Everyone stood frozen in shock as the twins plummeted toward the rocky cliff below. But one brave little girl didn't hesitate for a second, rushing to save them without knowing she was about to change her life forever. If you enjoy stories of unexpected heroes and life-changing moments, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments what inspires you most about acts of pure courage. The pristine mountain air carried the excited chatter of tourists as they gathered at Eagles Peak Overlook, one of Colorado's most breathtaking viewpoints. The morning sun painted the Rocky Mountains in shades of gold and amber, creating the perfect backdrop for family photos and memories that would last a lifetime. Marcus Thompson adjusted his expensive hiking boots and checked his Rolex Submariner. Even on vacation, the 32-year-old tech mogul couldn't completely disconnect from his obsession with precision and control. His perfectly tailored outdoor gear from Patagonia's premium line made him stand out among the casual hikers, but Marcus had never been one to blend in. At 6'2" with sharp green eyes and an athletic build maintained by his personal trainer, he commanded attention wherever he went. "Daddy, look how far we can see," exclaimed Emma, one of his 5-year-old twins, pressing her face against the safety railing. Her brother Ethan bounced excitedly beside her, both children wearing matching North Face jackets that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Stay close to the railing, guys," Marcus called out, though his attention was divided between his children and an important text from his assistant about the quarterly board meeting. Thompson Industries had just closed a $2 billion acquisition, and even on this rare family vacation, business matters demanded his attention. The Overlook buzzed with activity. A group of college students from Denver took selfies near the edge, while an elderly couple from Texas marveled at the vista through professional binoculars. A family with 3 young children spread out a picnic blanket, and several serious hikers consulted maps and compasses for their next trail. What none of them noticed was the small figure sitting alone on a boulder about 50 yards away, partially hidden by a cluster of pine trees. 7-year-old Maya Johnson watched the happy families with eyes that held too much wisdom for someone so young. Her clothes were too big, a faded purple sweater that hung loose on her small frame and jeans with carefully patched holes. Her dark skin bore the telltale signs of someone who'd been living outdoors, slightly sunburned cheeks and arms that spoke of days without proper shelter. Maya had been surviving on her own for 3 months now, ever since the accident that took her parents. She'd become invisible in the way that homeless children often do, slipping through the cracks of a system too overwhelmed to catch everyone who falls. She sustained herself through the kindness of strangers, a sandwich here, a few dollars there, sometimes a warm place to sleep when a shop owner took pity on her. Despite everything she'd endured, Maya's spirit remained unbroken. She still smiled at babies in strollers, still said please and thank you when someone helped her, and still believed in the fundamental goodness of people. Her mother had taught her that kindness was the most important gift you could give to the world, and Maya carried that lesson in her heart like a sacred promise. "Emma, Ethan, come back here right now." Marcus's sharp voice cut through the mountain air. His children had wandered toward a section where the railing was under repair, yellow caution tape fluttering in the wind like warning flags. Construction workers had been reinforcing the barrier after a recent rock slide had weakened the structure. But they'd gone to lunch, leaving the area temporarily unprotected. The twins, caught up in their excitement and the freedom of being outdoors, didn't immediately respond to their father's call. They'd spotted a family of chipmunks near the edge and were trying to get closer for a better look. Their small hands gripped the temporary orange fencing as they leaned forward, completely unaware of the danger they were in. Marcus pocketed his phone and strode toward them, his face showing the kind of controlled irritation that had made countless business rivals back down in boardrooms. "When I call you, you come immediately," he said firmly, reaching for Emma's hand. But just as his fingers were about to close around her tiny wrist, the unthinkable happened. The temporary fencing, not designed to support the weight of leaning children, gave way with a sharp metallic snap. Both Emma and Ethan tumbled forward, their small bodies disappearing over the edge of the cliff in an instant that seemed to stretch into eternity. The screams that erupted from Marcus's throat were primal, animalistic sounds that spoke of every parent's worst nightmare. He lunged toward the edge, nearly following his children over the precipice, but strong hands grabbed his arms and pulled him back. "Sir, you can't go over there," shouted a park ranger who had been checking permits nearby. "The edge isn't stable." Chaos erupted on the overlook. The college students stopped taking photos and stared in horror. The elderly couple dropped their binoculars. Parents instinctively pulled their own children closer, as if proximity could somehow protect them from the randomness of tragedy. "Call 911. Someone yelled, "Get the rescue team." Oh my God, those poor babies. But while everyone else stood frozen in shock, Maya was already moving. She had witnessed the entire sequence of events from her perch on the boulder, and something deep inside her, some combination of pure instinct and unshakable moral compass, launched her into action. Without a second's hesitation, she sprinted toward the cliff edge, her worn sneakers slapping against the rocky ground. "No, little girl, don't," the park ranger called out, but Maya was already past him, her small body diving through the gap where the railing had been. What happened next would be talked about for years to come, shared on social media millions of times, and eventually inspire documentaries and books about ordinary heroes doing extraordinary things. The cliff face wasn't a straight drop. It was a series of rocky ledges and outcroppings that had been carved by centuries of wind and weather. About 20 feet down, a narrow ledge caught Emma and Ethan's fall. They were conscious but clearly injured, crying for their daddy in voices that carried up to the horrified crowd above. Maya, with the fearlessness that only children possess, had somehow managed to catch hold of a sturdy root system and was working her way down the cliff face like a spider monkey. Her months of living rough had given her a survival instinct and physical agility that served her well now. She moved with purpose and surprising confidence, testing each handhold before committing her weight to it. "Hold on, sweeties," she called down to the twins, her voice remarkably calm. "I'm coming to help you." Above, Marcus was being physically restrained by multiple people as he fought to follow his children over the edge. Tears streamed down his face as he watched this unknown child risk everything to save his babies. "Who is she?" he demanded. "Someone find out who that little girl is." But nobody knew. Maya had been invisible for so long that she'd become a ghost in her own community. The crowd watched in breathless silence as Maya reached the ledge where the twins were trapped. Emma had a cut on her forehead that was bleeding freely, and Ethan was holding his left arm at an odd angle, but both children were alert and responsive. "Hi," Maya said gently, as if they were meeting at a playground instead of on a precarious cliff ledge. "I'm Maya. What are your names?" "I'm Emma," the little girl whispered through her tears. "And that's my brother Ethan. We're hurt." "I know, sweetheart, but you're going to be okay. Your daddy is up there waiting for you and help is coming. But I need you both to be very brave for me, okay?" Maya looked up at the crowd gathered above. The ledge they were on was stable enough to hold them temporarily, but getting back up would require professional rescue equipment. However, there was something else, a larger ledge about 10 feet to the left that would be much safer to wait on while help arrived. "Can you walk?" Maya asked Ethan gently. The little boy nodded bravely, though his face was pale with pain. "I think so." "Good, we're going to move very slowly to that bigger spot over there. Emma, I want you to hold my hand really tight, and Ethan, you hold onto my sweater. We're going to take tiny steps, okay?" What followed was the longest 5 minutes in Marcus Thompson's life. He watched, helpless, as a 7-year-old homeless girl carefully guided his injured children to safety, step by painstaking step. Her voice carried up to them, calm and reassuring, as she told the twins about the family of hawks she'd seen nesting nearby, anything to keep them focused on something other than their fear. The professional rescue team arrived just as Maya was settling the children on the larger, more secure ledge. Ropes dropped down from above, and within 30 minutes all 3 children were being pulled to safety. The moment Marcus had his children back in his arms, he broke down completely. These were the 2 most precious things in his world, and he'd nearly lost them forever. But even as he held them close, his eyes searched the crowd for the small hero who had saved them. Maya was sitting on the ground nearby, quietly accepting a bottle of water from a paramedic. She looked so small and fragile in the aftermath of her incredible act of courage, and Marcus felt his heart break in an entirely different way as he took in her obviously homeless state. "Sweetheart," he said, kneeling down beside her as the medical team finished checking her for injuries. "What's your name?" "Maya," she said softly, suddenly shy now that the emergency was over. "Maya, you saved my children's lives. Where are your parents? I need to thank them for raising such an incredible daughter." The light in Maya's eyes dimmed, and she looked down at her worn sneakers. "I don't have parents anymore. They went to heaven 3 months ago." Marcus felt the world tilt beneath him. This brave little girl who had risked everything for his family was alone in the world, living on the streets, and he'd been too caught up in his business deals to even notice her sitting there. "Where have you been staying?" he asked gently. Maya shrugged. "Different places. Sometimes the shelter has room, sometimes I sleep outside. It's okay. People are usually nice to me." Marcus looked at his own children, who were being loaded into an ambulance for the trip to the hospital for proper evaluation of their injuries. Then he looked back at Maya, and in that moment, he made a decision that would change all of their lives forever. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Maya's presence in their lives would unlock secrets that someone had killed to keep hidden. Before we continue with this incredible story, please take a moment to hit that like button if you're moved by Maya's selfless courage, and share in the comments about a time when someone's kindness changed your life. Denver General Hospital's pediatric wing had never felt more like a sanctuary to Marcus Thompson. The sterile white walls and antiseptic smell that he'd always associated with anxiety now represented safety and healing. Emma sat up in her hospital bed, sporting 7 stitches across her forehead, and what would undoubtedly become her favorite story to tell for years to come. Ethan, in the bed next to her, had his left arm in a cast decorated with cartoon characters that the nurses had helped him choose. "Daddy, when can we see Maya again?" Emma asked for the 15th time in 2 hours. The near-death experience had bonded the twins to their rescuer in a way that transcended normal childhood friendships. Maya wasn't just the girl who had saved them. She was their hero, their guardian angel, their new best friend, all rolled into one. Marcus sat between their beds, his expensive suit wrinkled, and his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it repeatedly. "Soon, sweetheart." Very soon, but Marcus was wrestling with emotions he'd never experienced before. Guilt dominated everything else. Guilt that he'd been distracted by work when his children nearly died. Guilt that a homeless 7-year-old had shown more presence of mind than he had, and perhaps most crushing of all, guilt that Maya had been suffering alone while he lived in luxury just miles away. The social worker assigned to Maya's case, Mrs. Patricia Hernandez, had been trying to locate temporary housing for the girl while they sorted out long-term arrangements. Maya had been staying in various emergency shelters since her parents' death, but the system was overwhelmed, and a child her age needed more stability than the rotating door of crisis care could provide. "Mr. Thompson," Mrs. Hernandez had explained earlier, "Maya is an exceptional child. Despite everything she's been through, she's maintained her grades through the homeless education program, and every adult who's worked with her comments on her resilience and kindness. But the reality is that we have a shortage of suitable foster families, especially for children who've experienced trauma." Marcus had listened to this with growing dismay. How could the system fail such an extraordinary child? How could Maya, who had risked her life to save his family, be shuffled from place to place like she didn't matter? "What about relatives?" he'd asked. "None that we can locate. Her parents were both only children, and her grandparents passed away before she was born. Maya is essentially alone in the world." That conversation had been 3 hours ago, and Marcus had spent those 3 hours making phone calls that would have shocked his business associates. Marcus Thompson, the man who'd built an empire through calculated risks and emotional detachment, was about to make the most impulsive decision of his life. His phone buzzed with yet another message from his assistant about the board meeting he was missing. But for the first time in his adult life, Marcus Thompson didn't care about business. He turned off his phone and slipped it into his jacket pocket. "Mr. Thompson?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Maya stood in the doorway of the hospital room, looking impossibly small in a hospital gown that was 3 sizes too big for her. A nurse stood behind her, smiling warmly. "Maya," Emma and Ethan both called out simultaneously, their faces lighting up like Christmas morning. Maya approached their beds shyly. Her earlier confidence from the rescue now replaced with the uncertainty of a child who wasn't sure where she belonged. "How are you feeling? Do your injuries hurt very much? Look at my cast." Ethan held up his decorated arm proudly. "The nurse said I can get everyone to sign it." "Will you sign it, Maya? And look at my stitches." Emma pointed to her forehead. "The doctor said I was very brave, but not as brave as you. You're the bravest person in the whole world." Maya blushed at the praise, not accustomed to being the center of positive attention. For months she'd survived by being invisible, by not drawing notice to herself. This kind of celebration felt foreign and wonderful, and terrifying all at once. Marcus watched this interaction with growing conviction about what he needed to do. Maya belonged with his family, not as some charity case or good deed, but because she'd already proven herself to be exactly the kind of person he wanted in his children's lives. Someone who acted selflessly, who put others before herself, who faced impossible odds with courage and grace. "Maya," Marcus said gently, "could I talk to you for a minute?" She nodded and followed him to the small seating area by the window. Through the glass, they could see the city of Denver stretching out below them, the same city where Maya had been surviving on the streets while Marcus lived in his penthouse, completely unaware of her existence. "Maya, I want to ask you something, and I want you to know that whatever you answer, it's okay. There's no wrong response." She looked up at him with those wise, dark eyes, waiting patiently for him to continue. "Would you like to come live with me and Emma and Ethan? Not just for a little while, but permanently. I want to adopt you if you'll let me. I want you to be part of our family." Maya's eyes widened, and for a moment Marcus worried that he'd overwhelmed her. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sounds of hospital life, monitors beeping, nurses' shoes squeaking on linoleum, the muffled conversations of other families dealing with their own crises. "You want me to be your daughter?" Maya whispered finally. "More than anything," Marcus said, and he was surprised by how much he meant it. "I know we just met, and I know this is a lot to process. But Maya, what you did today, you didn't just save my children's lives. You reminded me what really matters. I've been so focused on business and money and success that I forgot about the important things. You're already more family to us than some people who share our blood." Tears started flowing down Maya's cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. For the first time in 3 months, they were tears of relief, of hope, of the incredible feeling that comes when you realize you're not alone anymore. "I would like that very much," she said softly. "But are you sure?" "I don't have anything to give you. I don't have any money or toys or anything valuable." Marcus felt his own eyes filling with tears. "Maya, you already gave us the most valuable thing in the world. You gave us each other. You gave my children their lives back, and you gave me the chance to be a better father and a better man." From their hospital beds, Emma and Ethan had been listening to this conversation with the intensity that only children can muster when something important is happening in their world. "Does this mean Maya is going to be our sister?" Emma asked. "If she wants to be," Marcus replied. "Yes." Both twins shouted simultaneously, causing several nurses to peek into the room to make sure everything was okay. Maya looked around at this family that was opening their hearts and home to her, and for the first time since her parents' death, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. But even in this moment of pure joy, she couldn't shake the feeling that her luck was too good to be true. She'd learned during her months on the street that when something seemed too perfect, it usually was. What Maya didn't know was that her parents' death hadn't been the accident everyone believed it to be. Someone had been very carefully covering their tracks, and Maya's sudden emergence into the spotlight was about to threaten secrets that people had killed to protect. The Thompson family was about to discover that some rescues come with a price that no one sees coming. 3 floors below them, in the hospital's security office, a man in a maintenance uniform was making a phone call that would change everything. "She's here," he said quietly into his phone. "The Johnson girl. She's with the Thompson family now." The voice on the other end was calm but deadly serious. "Are you certain it's her?" "Positive. Same face as the photos, same age. Boss, what do you want me to do?" There was a long pause before the voice responded. "Nothing yet. But keep watching. If Maya Johnson starts remembering things she shouldn't remember, we may have to take action." The man in the maintenance uniform hung up and went back to his work, but his eyes never left the elevator that led to the pediatric wing. After 3 months of searching, They'd finally found the one witness who could destroy everything they'd built. Maya Johnson had no idea that her new family had just painted a target on all of their backs. The Thompson Mansion in Cherry Hills Village was a testament to the kind of wealth that most people only saw in movies. Nestled on 5 acres of perfectly manicured grounds, the 12,000-square-foot Georgian colonial featured everything money could buy. A gourmet kitchen with professional-grade appliances, a library with first-edition classics, a home theater, an indoor pool, and bedrooms larger than most people's entire apartments. But as Maya stood in the grand foyer 2 weeks after the hospital, surrounded by marble columns and crystal chandeliers, she felt more overwhelmed than impressed. The house was beautiful, but it was also enormous and intimidating, and so far removed from the small apartment she'd shared with her parents that it might as well have been on a different planet. "This is your room," Marcus said gently, opening the door to what had once been a guest suite. In the past 2 weeks, he'd had it completely redesigned with input from child psychologists about creating a space that would feel safe and welcoming to a traumatized child. The room was painted in soft lavender, Maya's favorite color, which Emma had discovered during one of their daily hospital visits. A beautiful 4-poster bed dominated one wall, surrounded by bookshelves filled with age-appropriate novels and picture books. A desk sat by the window, already equipped with art supplies and a laptop computer. Most importantly, Marcus had ensured that the room had multiple exits and hiding places, small details that a child who'd lived on the streets would unconsciously appreciate. "It's beautiful," Maya whispered, running her hand along the soft comforter. "But it's so big. Are you sure it's okay for me to have all this space?" Marcus knelt down to her eye level, something he'd learned to do during the extensive crash course in trauma-informed parenting he'd taken over the past 2 weeks. "Maya, this is your home now. Everything in this room belongs to you, and you never have to worry about it being taken away." Emma and Ethan bounced into the room, their earlier injuries already becoming distant memories in the way that children heal both physically and emotionally. "Maya, come see the playroom." Emma grabbed her new sister's hand. "Daddy had them put in a rock climbing wall because you're so good at climbing." As the children ran off to explore, Marcus remained in Maya's room, looking around at the expensive furniture and designer decorations. Money had always been his solution to problems: more staff, better technology, premium services. But he was beginning to understand that healing a 7-year-old's trauma would require something far more valuable than anything he could purchase. His phone rang, displaying the name of Detective Sarah Mitchell from the Denver Police Department. Marcus had been expecting this call. "Mr. Thompson, I hope I'm not intruding. I wanted to follow up on the paperwork regarding Maya's custody arrangement." "Of course, Detective. How can I help?" "Well, as part of the standard process, we've been reviewing the case file from her parents' accident. There are a few details that don't quite add up, and we wanted to ask Maya some questions. Nothing traumatic, just some basic information about the days leading up to the accident." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of details?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Would it be possible for us to meet sometime this week?" "With Maya present, but in a very controlled, child-friendly environment." "Detective, Maya has been through enough trauma. Is this absolutely necessary?" There was a pause before Detective Mitchell responded. "Mr. Thompson, I have a 7-year-old daughter myself. I wouldn't put any child through unnecessary stress. But there are some inconsistencies in the accident report that could be important. Maya might be able to help us understand what really happened to her parents." After hanging up, Marcus stood at Maya's bedroom window, looking out at the Rocky Mountains in the distance. The same mountains where his children had nearly died, where Maya had risked everything to save them. He'd thought that bringing Maya into their family would be the end of the story. The happy ending where the hero gets rewarded for her courage. But now he was beginning to suspect that it might only be the beginning. That evening, as the family sat down to dinner in the formal dining room, Maya was still adjusting to the reality of regular meals. The mahogany table could seat 12 people, but Marcus had arranged for them to sit close together at one end, creating a more intimate atmosphere. "So," Marcus said as their housekeeper, Mrs. Peterson, served grilled salmon and roasted vegetables, I thought tomorrow we could go shopping for school supplies. Maya, you'll be starting at the same private school as Emma and Ethan next week. Maya's fork paused halfway to her mouth. I get to go to a real school? Not just the homeless program? Emma looked confused. What's the homeless program? Maya explained how she'd been attending classes in a community center basement, where dedicated teachers worked with children who were living in temporary housing. It was a good program, but it was clearly designed as a stopgap rather than a permanent solution. Well, those days are over, Marcus said firmly. You're going to get the best education money can buy, just like Emma and Ethan. As they ate, Maya told them about her favorite subjects, reading and art, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian someday, and her incredible memory for faces and details. She described people she'd met during her months on the street, with photographic accuracy, remembering not just what they looked like, but what they'd been wearing, what they'd said, how even what time of day she'd encountered them. That's an amazing gift, Marcus told her. Most adults can't remember details like that. Maya shrugged modestly. Mama always said I had a camera in my brain. She said it would help me when I became a doctor or a scientist. The mention of her mother brought a brief shadow to Maya's face, but she pushed through it with the resilience that had helped her survive on the streets. Later that night, after tucking all three children into bed, Marcus went to his study and poured himself a glass of scotch, something he rarely did during the week. The conversation with Detective Mitchell kept replaying in his mind. What inconsistencies could there be in a car accident? Maya's parents had died when their vehicle slid off an icy mountain road during a late-season snowstorm. It was tragic, but not particularly mysterious. His computer chimed with an encrypted message from his head of security, a former FBI agent, named David Chen, who Marcus kept on retainer to handle sensitive business matters. Boss got those background checks you requested on Maya Johnson's family. Most of it's routine, but there's something weird. Maya's father, Dr. James Johnson, was a research scientist at Biomed Technologies. He was working on some kind of classified government contract before he died. The project details are sealed, but it involved genetic research with military applications. Marcus stared at the message, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking into place in ways he didn't like. Biomed Technologies was a competitor of his own company's biotech division. More importantly, Dr. Johnson had been working on classified research that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. His phone rang again. This time the caller ID simply said, "Unknown." "Mr. Thompson?" The voice was electronically distorted, obviously disguised. "I believe you have something that belongs to us." "Who is this? How did you get this number?" Dr. Johnson was a very careless man, Mr. Thompson. He took things that didn't belong to him when he died. Things that his daughter might remember, given her unusual memory capabilities. Marcus felt ice forming in his veins. "What are you talking about?" "Maya Johnson is a very special child, as I'm sure you've discovered, but her value to you is nothing compared to her value to certain people who would prefer that Dr. Johnson's research remain buried. I'm calling to give you a choice." "What kind of choice?" "Send the girl away, far away, tonight, and everyone stays safe and happy. Keep her close to you, and you'll discover that some family reunions come with a very high price." The line went dead. Marcus stood in his study, looking out at the security lights that illuminated his property, suddenly realizing that all his money and all his influence might not be enough to protect the family he'd just created. Upstairs, Maya was lying in her beautiful new bed, staring at the ceiling and trying to push away memories that had been growing stronger since she'd started feeling safe again. Memories of her father working late into the night, of hushed phone conversations that stopped when she entered the room, of her mother's growing anxiety in the weeks before the accident, and most disturbing of all, memories of the man who had followed them to the grocery store 3 days before her parents died. That man in a maintenance uniform who had seemed familiar, but who had disappeared whenever she'd tried to get a better look at him. The same man she'd glimpsed in the hospital corridor during one of her daily visits with Marcus and the twins. Maya pulled her covers up to her chin and made a decision that would prove to be either very brave or very dangerous. Tomorrow, she was going to start remembering everything her parents had told her to forget, even if it meant destroying the only real family she'd ever known. If you're as captivated by this family's dangerous journey as I am, please show your support with a like. And tell me in the comments, have you ever discovered a truth that changed everything you believed? The next morning brought an unseasonably warm October day to Denver, with golden sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thompson Mansion's breakfast room. Maya sat at the kitchen island, methodically eating her pancakes while Emma and Ethan chatted about their upcoming return to school. To any observer, it would have looked like a perfectly normal family scene, but Marcus had barely slept. The threatening phone call had shattered his illusion that wealth could protect the people he loved. He'd spent the night researching Dr. James Johnson, and what he'd discovered had only deepened his concern. Dr. Johnson hadn't just been any research scientist. He'd been one of the leading experts in genetic memory encoding, a cutting-edge field that combined neuroscience with genetic engineering. "Daddy, you look tired," Emma observed with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "Did you have bad dreams?" "Something like that, sweetheart," Marcus replied, forcing a smile as he poured his third cup of coffee. Maya looked up from her plate, those intelligent dark eyes studying his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. She'd developed an uncanny ability to read people's emotions, probably a survival skill from her months on the street. "Mr. Marcus," she said softly, using the formal address she still defaulted to when she was uncertain. "Are you worried about something?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus found himself at a crossroads. He could lie to protect her innocence, or he could trust her with a truth that might put them all in danger. Before he could answer, the doorbell rang. Through the security monitor, Marcus could see Detective Sarah Mitchell standing on the front porch, looking professional but approachable in a navy blazer and khaki pants. "Maya," Marcus said gently, "remember I told you that a police detective wanted to ask you some questions about your parents? She's here now, but I want you to know that you don't have to answer anything that makes you uncomfortable." Maya nodded solemnly. "It's okay, I want to help if I can." Detective Mitchell turned out to be a woman in her early 40s, with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She had the sort of calm presence that immediately put children at ease, a skill she'd developed during 15 years of working with juvenile witnesses. They settled in Marcus's study, a room he'd chosen because it felt less formal than his office, but more serious than the living room. Maya sat in a leather chair that dwarfed her small frame, while Marcus positioned himself nearby, close enough to provide support but far enough away to give Maya space to speak freely. "Maya," Detective Mitchell began, "I want you to know that you're not in any trouble. We're just trying to understand some things about the night your parents died. Can you tell me about the last few days before the accident?" Maya was quiet for a moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Daddy was working a lot, more than usual, and he kept getting phone calls that made him upset. Do you remember anything about those phone calls? Not the words exactly, but—" Maya paused, that remarkable memory of hers clearly processing details that most children would have forgotten. "He kept saying something about the project and they can't have it, and once I heard him tell Mama that someone was following us." Detective Mitchell leaned forward slightly. "Following you? Did you see anyone suspicious?" Maya nodded slowly. "There was a man. I saw him at the grocery store and then again when we went to my piano lesson and then at the park. He always wore the same clothes, like a janitor or maintenance person, but his shoes were too nice." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Maya had just described the same man who'd called him last night, the same man she'd mentioned seeing at the hospital. "Maya," Detective Mitchell continued, "did your father ever give you anything to hold on to? Maybe something he said was important." "He gave me this." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out what looked like an ordinary USB flash drive on a chain around her neck. "He said it was our insurance policy and that I should never let anyone else have it, but I don't know what's on it." The room went completely silent. Marcus stared at the small device that Maya had been wearing this entire time, hidden under her clothes. Detective Mitchell's expression had gone from gentle questioning to intense focus. "Maya," the detective said carefully, "have you shown this to anyone else?" "No." "Daddy made me promise to keep it secret. He said some people might want to hurt our family to get it." Detective Mitchell and Marcus exchanged a look that communicated volumes. They both understood that Maya had just revealed the motive for her parents' murder and the reason she was now in danger. "Maya, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, "I think we need to find out what's on that drive. But first, Detective Mitchell and I need to talk privately for a minute. Can you go play with Emma and Ethan?" After Maya left the room, Detective Mitchell's professional composure cracked slightly. "Mr. Thompson, that child has been carrying around what might be classified government research for 3 months. If the wrong people find out—" "They already know," Marcus interrupted, and he told her about the threatening phone call. Detective Mitchell pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the FBI. This is way beyond local police jurisdiction now." But before she could dial, Marcus's security system chimed with an alert. David Chen's voice came through the intercom. "Boss, we've got a problem. There are 3 vehicles approaching the property. They're not showing up in any government databases, and they're moving in a coordinated pattern." Through the study windows, Marcus could see black SUVs pulling up his circular driveway. Men in dark suits were emerging from the vehicles, and while they looked professional, something about their movements suggested they weren't law enforcement. "Maya!" Marcus shouted, running toward the main part of the house. "Emma, Ethan, come here right now!" The children appeared from the playroom, confused by the urgency in his voice. Maya took one look at his face and immediately understood that the danger her father had warned her about had finally found them. "The back entrance," Detective Mitchell said firmly, drawing her service weapon. "My car is parked on the side street." But as they moved toward the rear of the house, Marcus's security monitors showed more men positioning themselves around the perimeter. They were completely surrounded. The front doorbell rang, followed by a polite but firm knock. "Mr. Thompson," a voice called out, "we're with a private security firm contracted by the federal government. We need to speak with you about a matter of national security." Marcus looked at Maya, who was clutching the USB drive through her shirt. In that moment, he made a decision that would define the rest of their lives. "Maya, give me the drive." "But Daddy said—" "Your daddy was trying to protect you. Now it's my turn." Marcus knelt down to her level. "Whatever happens, I want you to remember that you're part of this family now. That means we protect each other no matter what." Maya pulled the chain over her head and placed the drive in Marcus's hand. "What's going to happen to us?" Before Marcus could answer, the polite knocking stopped, and the sound of the front door being forced open echoed through the mansion. "Dr. Johnson was smarter than we gave him credit for," Detective Mitchell muttered, checking her ammunition. He knew they'd come for his research eventually, so he gave it to the one person they'd never think to search, a homeless 7-year-old. The men in suits were spreading through the house now, their footsteps deliberate and coordinated. They weren't here to arrest anyone. They were here to retrieve something worth killing for. Marcus pulled out his phone and hit a number he'd hoped never to use. "David, execute Protocol 7. "Are you sure, boss?" "Do it now." Protocol 7 was Marcus's nuclear option, a complete data wipe of all his servers, followed by the activation of a dead man's switch that would release copies of his most sensitive business files to journalists around the world. If someone was going to destroy his family, they were going to pay a price that would make headlines for months. "Mr. Thompson," the voice called out again, closer now, "we know you're here. We're not here to hurt anyone. We just need to recover some stolen government property." Maya looked up at Marcus with eyes that held far too much understanding for a 7-year-old. "They killed my parents for this, didn't they?" Marcus felt his heart break as he nodded. "I think so, sweetheart." The footsteps were getting closer. Detective Mitchell was speaking quietly into her radio, calling for backup that might not arrive in time. Emma and Ethan were starting to cry, sensing the fear in the adults around them, even if they didn't understand the cause. And then Maya did something that surprised everyone. She stepped forward, moving toward the sound of the approaching men. "Maya, no!" Marcus reached for her, but she was already walking toward the study door. "It's okay," she said with a calmness that was heartbreaking in its maturity. "I know what I have to do." What none of them realized was that Dr. Johnson had taught his daughter more than just how to hide a USB drive. He'd also taught her how to use it. Maya walked into the mansion's grand foyer with the kind of composure that comes from having survived things no child should ever face. The men in dark suits stopped their systematic search when they saw her, and for a moment, the house fell completely silent, except for the grandfather clock's steady ticking. The leader of the group was a tall man with silver hair and cold grey eyes. He wore an expensive suit that managed to look both professional and vaguely threatening. When he smiled at Maya, it was the kind of smile that adults use when they're trying to appear harmless, but aren't very good at it. "You must be Maya," he said, crouching down to her eye level in a gesture that might have seemed friendly, if not for the way his colleagues positioned themselves around the room. "My name is Mr. Stone. We've been looking for you for a very long time." Maya studied his face with that uncanny ability of hers to read people. "You're the one who hurt my parents." Mr. Stone's smile never wavered, but something flickered behind his eyes. "Your parents were involved in some very important work, Maya. Work that belongs to the United States government. Your father took something that didn't belong to him. He took it because you were going to use it to hurt people." Maya replied with a certainty that made every adult in the room uncomfortable. Marcus, Detective Mitchell, Emma, and Ethan had followed Maya into the foyer, forming a protective semicircle behind her. Detective Mitchell kept her hand near her weapon, but she was outnumbered 5-1. And the men with Mr. Stone didn't look like the type to be deterred by local law enforcement. "Maya," Mr. Stone continued in that false friendly tone, "I know your father gave you something to keep safe. We need it back. It's very dangerous for children to have access to this kind of technology." "What kind of technology?" Marcus demanded, stepping forward despite the obvious risk. Mr. Stone stood up, his attention shifting to Marcus with the kind of calculating look that venture capitalists use when evaluating a potential acquisition. "Mr. Thompson, you've built an impressive empire. It would be a shame if anything happened to compromise that success." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm for the children's sake. "Dr. Johnson was working on genetic memory enhancement," Maya said suddenly, causing everyone to look at her in surprise. "He was trying to help people with brain injuries remember things. But you wanted to use it to make soldiers who could never forget their training, even if they got hurt." The silence that followed this statement was deafening. Maya had just revealed classified information that she shouldn't have known, demonstrating both her incredible memory and her father's trust in her understanding. Mr. Stone's friendly facade finally cracked. "Your father filled your head with a lot of complicated ideas, Maya, but children don't always understand the bigger picture. I understand that you killed them because they wouldn't give you the research," Maya said with devastating simplicity. "And I understand that you'll kill Mr. Marcus and Emma and Ethan if I don't give you what you want." Marcus felt his world tilt. This 7-year-old girl was negotiating for their lives with a composure that would have impressed his toughest business adversaries. "Maya, don't," he started to say, but she held up her small hand to stop him. "I'll give you the USB drive," Maya said to Mr. Stone. "But first I want you to promise that you'll leave my new family alone." Mr. Stone's smile returned. "Of course, Maya. Once we have what we came for, we'll disappear and you can go back to your normal life." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the USB drive, holding it up for everyone to see. But instead of handing it over, she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She plugged it into Marcus's smartphone. "Maya, what are you doing?" Marcus asked. "Something Daddy taught me," she replied, her fingers moving across the phone's screen with surprising dexterity. "He said if bad people ever came for the research, I should show everyone what they really wanted to do with it." The phone screen lit up with a video file. Dr. James Johnson appeared on the display, sitting in what looked like his home office. He looked tired and frightened, but his voice was steady and clear. "If you're watching this," Dr. Johnson's recorded voice said, "then Maya is in danger, and the people responsible for our deaths have found her. My name is Dr. James Johnson, and I'm about to expose a conspiracy that goes all the way to the highest levels of government." Mr. Stone lunged toward Maya. But Marcus was faster, scooping her up and backing away while she continued to hold the phone. "The genetic memory project I was working on," Dr. Johnson continued from the video, "was never intended for medical use. It was designed to create super soldiers who could retain perfect tactical memory, even after severe brain trauma. But the side effects are catastrophic. Test subjects began experiencing violent psychotic episodes, becoming unable to distinguish between memories and reality. Detective Mitchell was recording everything with her own phone, broadcasting the video live to the police department's servers. The people funding this research have killed 12 scientists who tried to expose the program, Dr. Johnson's voice continued. They've covered up the deaths of 43 test subjects, and they're planning to begin human trials on military personnel without informed consent. Mr. Stone pulled out a gun, but Detective Mitchell was ready for him. Police, drop your weapon. The mansion erupted into chaos. Gunshots echoed through the grand foyer as Detective Mitchell and Mr. Stone's men exchanged fire. Marcus shielded Maya and the twins behind the marble staircase, while Maya continued to hold the phone, ensuring that her father's testimony was being broadcast to the world. The formula for the memory enhancement compound is encoded in this drive, Dr. Johnson's recorded voice said over the sound of gunfire. But more importantly, so is the evidence of every crime committed to develop it. Maya, if you're hearing this, remember that the truth is more powerful than any weapon they have. As if summoned by those words, the sound of sirens filled the air. Detective Mitchell's backup had arrived, along with what sounded like half the Denver police force. Mr. Stone, bleeding from a wound in his shoulder, made one last desperate attempt to reach Maya, but Marcus was there, placing himself between the armed man and his children with a fury that surprised everyone, including himself. "You want to hurt my daughter?" Marcus growled, using the word daughter for the first time. "You'll have to go through me." The confrontation ended when Detective Mitchell's reinforcements stormed the mansion. Mr. Stone and his surviving men were taken into custody, though everyone knew that they were probably just the visible tip of a much larger conspiracy. In the aftermath, as EMTs checked everyone for injuries and FBI agents secured the scene, Maya sat on the mansion's front steps, finally looking like the 7-year-old child she was. The USB drive was in the hands of federal investigators, and her father's video testimony was already spreading across the internet, faster than any government agency could contain it. Marcus sat down beside her. His expensive suit rumpled and torn from the confrontation. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. Maya looked up at him with those wise, dark eyes. "I think so. But Mr. Marcus?" "Yes, sweetheart. My daddy's really gone now, isn't he? I mean, I gave away the last thing he left me." Marcus felt tears threatening as he understood what she meant. The USB drive hadn't just contained classified research. It had contained her father's final message to her. His last gift, his way of continuing to protect her even after death. "Maya," Marcus said softly, pulling her close, "your father gave you something much more valuable than anything on that drive. He gave you the courage to do the right thing, even when it's scary. He gave you the strength to save people, even when it puts you in danger. And he gave you the wisdom to know that some things are more important than keeping secrets." Emma and Ethan joined them on the steps, still shaky from the excitement, but determined to be close to their new sister. "Does this mean we're safe now?" Emma asked. Marcus looked around at the FBI agents, the police cars, the news vans that were already starting to arrive. Maya's father's video was about to expose one of the largest government conspiracies in recent history. There would be investigations, trials, testimony. Their lives would never be private again. "I think so," he said finally. "But even if we weren't, we'd face it together. That's what families do." Maya leaned against his shoulder, finally allowing herself to feel like the child she was. "Mr. Marcus?" "Yes?" "You don't have to call me your daughter if it feels weird." "I know I'm not really." Marcus tilted her chin up so she was looking at him directly. "Maya Thompson, you are absolutely, completely, 100% my daughter. Blood doesn't make a family. Love does. And I love you just as much as I love Emma and Ethan." For the first time since her parents' death, Maya smiled a smile that reached all the way to her eyes. But even in that moment of victory, none of them noticed the figure watching from across the street. A woman in a red sedan, taking photos with a telephoto lens. Maya's father had exposed one conspiracy, but he'd never known about the other one. The conspiracy that had been searching for Maya for reasons that had nothing to do with government research. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. If this incredible conclusion moves you, please show your appreciation with a like and share in the comments. What surprised you most about Maya's true story? 6 months later, the Thompson family had settled into a new kind of normal. The mansion in Cherry Hills Village had been sold, along with most of Marcus's other visible assets. They now lived in a comfortable but modest home, in a quiet suburb of Denver, protected by a security detail that had become as much a part of their daily routine as morning coffee. The trials from the genetic memory conspiracy had made headlines for weeks. Mr. Stone and 17 other government officials and defense contractors were serving life sentences for conspiracy, murder, and treason. Dr. Johnson's research had been declassified and turned over to legitimate medical researchers who were using it to help veterans with traumatic brain injuries, exactly what he'd originally intended. Maya was thriving at her new school, though she still sometimes had nightmares about the men in dark suits. Emma and Ethan had adapted to their new circumstances with the resilience that only children possess, and they seemed to genuinely enjoy having a sister who could remember every story they'd ever told her and who never forgot a birthday or important event. Marcus had been forced to step down as CEO of Thompson Industries due to the media attention, but he discovered that he didn't miss the corporate world as much as he'd expected. He was spending his time writing a book about corporate responsibility and raising his 3 children, and finding both endeavors far more fulfilling than any business deal he'd ever closed. The family was having lunch in their backyard when the doorbell rang. Marcus tensed automatically. Unexpected visitors still made everyone nervous, but the security detail's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Thompson, there's a woman here who says she's Maya's grandmother. She has documentation." Maya dropped her sandwich, her eyes wide with shock. "I don't have a grandmother. Daddy said all our family was gone." Marcus felt a familiar chill run down his spine. After everything they'd been through, he'd learned to trust his instincts about potential threats. "Tell her we'll meet her at the front gate," he said into the intercom. The woman waiting for them was elegant and well-dressed, probably in her early 60s, with silver hair styled in a sophisticated bob. She carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that suggested wealth and education. But what caught Maya's attention immediately was her eyes. They were the same unusual shade of dark brown as Maya's own. "Maya," the woman said softly, tears streaming down her face. "My beautiful granddaughter, I've been searching for you for so long." Maya instinctively moved closer to Marcus, her hand finding his. "Who are you?" "My name is Eleanor Whitman. I'm your mother's mother." The woman held up a leather portfolio. "I have birth certificates, DNA test results, photographs, everything you need to verify my identity." Marcus accepted the documents with skeptical hands, but as he reviewed them, his doubts began to fade. The paperwork looked legitimate, and the DNA results showed a 99.7% probability that Eleanor Whitman was Maya's maternal grandmother. "Why didn't my parents ever mention you?" Maya asked, her voice small and uncertain. Eleanor's face crumpled with grief. "Because I made a terrible mistake 20 years ago. When your mother fell in love with your father, I disapproved. James came from a poor family, and I thought Sarah was throwing her life away. I said horrible things, threatened to disinherit her if she married him. She chose love over money, and I was too proud to admit I was wrong." Maya listened to this story with the intensity she brought to everything important. "So you never met me?" "I saw you once, when you were 2 years old. Sarah brought you to the park near my house, hoping we could reconcile. But I was still too stubborn, too angry. I watched you play on the swings from my car, and then I drove away. It's the biggest regret of my life." Marcus studied Eleanor Whitman's face, looking for any sign of deception. He'd become expert at reading people during his business career, and everything about this woman suggested genuine grief and remorse. "How did you find us?" he asked. "The news coverage from the trial. When I saw Maya's picture on television, I knew immediately that she was my granddaughter. Sarah was the light of my life, and Maya has her eyes, her smile, her brave heart." Eleanor wiped her tears with a delicate handkerchief. "I've spent the past 6 months working with private investigators and lawyers to prove my identity and locate you." Maya looked up at Marcus, her expression torn between hope and fear. "What does this mean?" Eleanor knelt down to Maya's eye level, careful not to invade her personal space. "It means that you have family you didn't know about. I can't undo the years I lost with your mother, but I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me." "But I already have a family," Maya said firmly, taking Marcus's hand. "Of course you do," Eleanor said quickly. Marcus and Emma and Ethan are your family. I would never try to take you away from them. I just want to be your grandmother, if there's room in your heart for one more person who loves you." Over the following weeks, Eleanor proved her sincerity through patience and consistency. She visited regularly, but never pressured Maya for more attention than the girl was comfortable giving. She brought photo albums filled with pictures of Maya's mother as a child, stories about Sarah's childhood dreams and ambitions, and family heirlooms that helped Maya understand where she came from. Most importantly, Eleanor never once suggested that Maya should leave the Thompson family. Instead, she worked to support and strengthen Maya's bond with Marcus, Emma, and Ethan. "Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become," Eleanor told Marcus one afternoon, as they watched Maya teaching Emma and Ethan how to braid friendship bracelets. "She always said she wanted Maya to grow up in a family where love mattered more than money." Marcus smiled at the irony. "Funny how losing everything helped me understand what really mattered." The breakthrough came 3 months after Eleanor's first visit. Maya had been quiet for several days, clearly processing something important. Finally, she approached Marcus while he was reading in his study. "Mr. Marcus," she said, using the formal address she still defaulted to when discussing serious matters, "would it be okay if I called Mrs. Eleanor Grandmama? And would it be okay if she came to my school play next week?" Marcus felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. "Maya, sweetheart, Eleanor is your grandmother. You can call her whatever feels right to you, and you can invite her to anything you want. But you're still my daddy, right?" "This doesn't change that." Marcus pulled her into his lap, marveling at how much she'd grown since that day on the mountain. "Maya Thompson, I am your father, and I will be your father until the day I die. Nothing and no one will ever change that." The school play was a turning point for everyone. Watching Maya perform on stage, confident, happy, surrounded by friends and family who loved her, Eleanor finally understood that her daughter had made the right choice 20 years ago. Love really was more important than money, and Maya had found her way to exactly the family she needed. After the performance, as they all gathered for ice cream at Maya's favorite restaurant, Eleanor made an announcement that surprised everyone. "I've been thinking about legacy," she said, looking around the table at Marcus, Maya, Emma, and Ethan. "I spent too many years focused on the wrong things, and I lost precious time with the people who mattered most. I want to do something meaningful with the resources I have." She pulled out a legal document and placed it on the table. "I'm establishing the Sarah Johnson Memorial Foundation for homeless children. Maya, when you turn 18, you'll inherit control of a $50 million endowment dedicated to making sure no child ever has to survive on the streets the way you did." Maya stared at the document, not fully understanding the numbers, but grasping the significance. "You want to help other kids like me? I want to honor your mother's memory by continuing the work your parents started, protecting children and fighting for what's right." Marcus read through the legal papers, amazed by Eleanor's generosity. But what impressed him most was how she'd structured the foundation. Maya would have ultimate control, but she'd be supported by a board that included child welfare experts, former homeless youth who'd aged out of the system, and advocates for children's rights. "There's one more thing," Eleanor said, smiling at Maya. "The Foundation's first project will be funding a new wing at Denver Children's Hospital. It will be called the Maya Thompson Center for Pediatric Trauma Recovery." Maya looked around the table at her family, Marcus, who'd given her safety and love, Emma and Ethan, who'd given her the joy of being a big sister, and Eleanor, who'd given her a connection to her past and hope for the future. "Can we make sure it has a rock-climbing wall?" Maya asked seriously. "For kids who need to practice being brave?" Everyone laughed, but Eleanor nodded solemnly. "If that's what you want, then that's exactly what it will have." 6 months later, at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Maya Thompson Center, Maya stood between Marcus and Eleanor. Wearing a hard hat that was slightly too big for her 8-year-old head, Emma and Ethan flanked them, equally proud and excited about their sister's accomplishment. The local news reporter conducting interviews asked Maya what she wanted people to remember about her story. Maya thought for a moment, then looked directly into the camera with the same courage she'd shown on the mountain that day. "I want people to remember that families come in all different shapes," she said with the wisdom of someone far older than her years. Sometimes your family is the people you're born to. And sometimes it's the people who choose to love you when you need it most. And sometimes, if you're really lucky like me, it's both. As she spoke, Marcus felt a profound sense of completion. The scared, desperate businessman who'd nearly lost his children on a mountain overlook was gone, replaced by a father who understood that the most important investments couldn't be measured in dollars and cents. Maya had saved more than just Emma and Ethan that day on the cliff. She'd saved him too, teaching him that true wealth came from the courage to love unconditionally and the wisdom to recognize what really mattered. The Thompson family went home that evening to their modest house in their quiet neighborhood, surrounded by the kind of riches that no stock portfolio could ever provide. The riches of knowing that they belonged to each other, no matter what challenges the future might bring. And in her bedroom that night, as Maya looked at the photos Eleanor had given her of her mother and the drawings Emma and Ethan had made for her, she finally understood what her father had meant when he told her that love was the most powerful force in the universe. She'd saved Marcus's children with physical courage on a mountain cliff, but they'd all saved each other with something even more powerful, the courage to open their hearts to a love that transformed everyone it touched. The end.